Not as many fireworks in the Cardinals-Brewers finale on Sunday as we might have expected, but the Cardinals still fall just a bit short, putting them in a bit of an uncomfortable spot as the road trip continues. We'll take stock of where the Cardinals are on Monday's off day, plus break down the significant MLB trade from Sunday that could have some impact on the Cardinals and Nolan Arenado down the line. We'll talk about it coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Monday morning, June 16th, 2025, on the heels of a Cardinals loss in the series finale against the Milwaukee Brewers. So the Cardinals dropped that series 3 out of 4 and sit here on Monday's off day in a bit of a predicament when you look at the NL Central standings. The Cardinals now 7 games back of the division-leading Cubs, and they've got some company. The Brewers have passed the Cardinals up, and they're a game and a half clear of the Cardinals right now. The other company that has joined the Cardinals is the Cincinnati Reds, who are now 37 and 35. That's the same record as the Cardinals have. So it's a two-way tie for third place and fourth place in the National League Central Division. Really, the only team that's out of this race completely is the Pirates, who are sitting 15 and a half games back of the Cubs, and they're sitting 8 and a half games back of the Cardinals and Reds. But the Cardinals did not get the result that they were looking for from that series in Milwaukee, dropping 3 of 4. And unfortunately, it came in a game that was winnable by a 3-2 score on Sunday. The Cardinals fall just short. Had an opportunity in the ninth inning, and they just could not put the ball in play after getting a couple of runners on base. I love the beautiful blue bunt by Nolan Gorman to really set the table for a nice potential situation there for the Cardinals, and they just couldn't get anything more after that. Arenado had the double, Gorman had the bunt hit. Jordan Walker, Victor Scott, Mason Wynn all go down on strikes. And I really thought Mason Wynn let the 1-0 pitch go by. That was the best chance he had to put bat to ball against McGill, the Milwaukee Brewers closing pitcher. And he let it go by and didn't see another fastball in the zone the rest of the at-bat. Ended up flailing at some breaking pitches. It's not just on Mason Wynn. It's not just on Victor Scott. It's not just on Jordan Walker. But those are 3 young players that are going to go through growing pains. I mean, that is part of what we have talked a lot about for this 2025 St. Louis Cardinals season. And unfortunately, with those 3 stacked up in the bottom of the order for that ninth inning on Sunday, it comes to fruition in that fashion where the Cardinals just weren't. I mean, they just needed a ball in play at some point to find a way. And they even got the benefit of the wild pitch or the pass ball, whatever the ruling was, to make it runners on second and third. They had every opportunity there to really strike, take advantage, and steal a split from the jaws of defeat, and they just couldn't pull it off. There were other moments in this game on Sunday that, little margins as we talk about that went against the Cardinals. Didn't have their best defensive lineup out there. Barrero started the game for Mason Wynn. Wynn was subbed in about midway through, and Barrero is just not going to make some of the plays that Mason Wynn can make. Ivan Herrera catching behind the plate lets a ball get away that allows some runner to advance, leading to one of the runs on a sacrifice fly for Milwaukee. Christian Yelich had a home run in this game, as did Ivan Herrera, his 8th of the season. But this was a pretty well-pitched ball game. Miles Mikolas did his job, man. 6 innings, 2 runs. Really did a nice job for the Cardinals and just couldn't quite come up with enough offense to get past a Milwaukee Brewers team that is pitching really, really well right now. We always kind of count the Brewers out every year, it seems like, at the beginning of the season and say, who do they have in their lineup, really? Who do they have in their rotation, really? Their bullpen, whatever. We don't know who these guys are. And year after year after year, the Milwaukee Brewers, they're a well-run organization. You got to give them credit where it's due. They're going to be in the mix for this thing, I think, to the bitter end. The Cubs, we know, are pretty good. How legit are the Cubs? I guess time will tell. We still have not seen Cards-Cubs yet in 2025, and we're going to get it 13 times. So that is going to be a head-to-head series that does a lot of dictating on how legitimate the Cardinals are going to be in the NL Central and in the wild card races. So we'll see what that looks like. But as you're kind of watching this MLB NL Central unfold, you can tell that it's going to be a crowded field. And we'll see about the Reds. I mean, the Cardinals see the Reds here coming up, this coming weekend now after the Chicago White Sox series wraps up. The Cardinals come back home. They've got a homestand featuring the Reds and Cubs, and these NL Central games are going to be meaningful. They were meaningful this weekend, and the Cardinals just didn't get enough done against the Brewers, dropping 3 out of 4 and losing a little bit more ground in the standings. As time goes on, we'll see what that ends up meaning for their prospects. But let me know in the comments below what you're thinking about this Cardinals team on this Monday, the off day between the road trip as they go from Milwaukee to Chicago, taking on the White Sox. You got to beat up on the White Sox, right? I mean, this is a series that really you kind of circle some of these on your calendar throughout the year when you realize how much the competition is going to be padding their stats against the lesser teams in the league. And the Cardinals did a nice job of this during a stretch where they played the Pirates, they played the Nationals, and they gobbled up a bunch of wins in those series. But we know the Cubs are just recently coming off of a stretch where they got to play a bunch of these type of teams in a row, including the White Sox, including the Marlins like 6 times. The Rockies were mixed in there. The advantage, or one of the advantages the Cardinals do still have, if you're trying to look on the bright side here, with the Cardinals 7 games back in the division, is they've got a lot of these games remaining. White Sox, they've not played yet, and they're going to this week. You have not played the Rockies at all, and you get them for 2 series. And you also have those divisional games yet to be played too. So there's some weak opponents and some opponents that aren't weak, but they are the teams you're directly competing against. It's going to be pretty big for the Cardinals to take advantage of those games. I want to quickly circle back to Saturday to kind of clean up a little bit of the conversation there, because there was some stuff that I just did not get to. I neglected to remember to talk about it, like Ollie Marmol kind of glaring and smiling into the dugout. Pat Murphy on the other side for the Brewers. That was a moment that I wanted to kind of talk about and I forgot to. I thought Saturday, and again, it kind of falls a little bit deaf now that the Cardinals didn't win on Sunday. They didn't follow it up with a response. There wasn't a lot of fireworks in Sunday's game. I thought with Miles Michaelis on the mound, you had every chance to maybe see some fireworks, but I think he did what he had to do to try to help the Cardinals win the game. That was more important than trying to carry over any, bitterness or whatever from Saturday. But there were a lot of things that went on, and certainly I think the Cardinals and the Brewers as well will remember the next time these two teams match up. Frankly, Sunday's game was just too close throughout to have any extracurriculars involved. That was a 3-run margin on either side. Maybe you see one team kind of say, "Yeah, whatever, we're already out of it. Let's go ahead and have a little bit of retribution here." But nope, nothing like that I could tell from Sunday's game. But Saturday, certainly you had the managers kind of locking eyes and making some comments from across the way. I sort of missed Palante's role in a lot of it as well. Like, Palante does hit Rhys Hoskins, but there's also the moment where Palante's collided with at home plate. As a pitcher, that, kind of I feel like escalates the conflict to another level where, sure, you're going to have that bang bang play at home, and sometimes things are going to happen, but I feel like the Cardinals probably took some exception to that aspect of it as well. I forgot completely to bring that up on Saturday night's podcast, but that is something that I think added a little bit of fuel to that fire between the Cardinals and the Brewers in that game. But unfortunately, Cardinals unable to get their comeuppance on Sunday and find a way to split the series. So we'll see moving forward what goes from there. We'll do a little down on the farm today because I talked about yesterday or Saturday not having time for it. And Michael McGreevy did have an outing that we want to make sure we highlight and talk about. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about this trade that happened in MLB yesterday that I do think has some kind of ancillary relation to the Cardinals and where they are in their season. 2 games above 500 for the Cardinals. We still don't know if they're going to be buyers, sellers. Are they going to stand pat? What's it going to look like at the trade deadline for St. Louis? I still think is a pretty big question here. But what's interesting is the fact that you think about Nolan Arenado and you think about how his name has swirled in trade conversations, certainly in the offseason and in the spring. Not so much now because we sort of know the deal, right? There is a limited number of teams that he would go to or would have gone to, and those teams hadn't really shown the interest. But with the Boston Red Sox and Rafael Devers, they moved Devers, and I know he wasn't playing third base, and so it's like, oh, it doesn't really free up third base specifically. But that was the whole thing, right? They didn't want to continue to play him at third base. They had better defensive options. They went out and signed Bregman. They wanted to reshuffle their infield, but they wanted Devers to play first base. He felt a certain way about that and decided, you guys don't value me. I don't want to do that for you. They went as far as to get, I believe, ownership involved to try to compel him to take some ground balls and do what was best for the team. A team that's got competitive intentions this year. and had been playing some pretty good baseball recently. But they trade Devers yesterday to the Giants, which is interesting because Matt Chapman, I know he's on the IL right now, I believe, but he is as good of a defensive third baseman as there is. So you're not playing third base over there either. I don't really know what that's going to look like for Devers in his situation. If he'll be cool with, maybe being a first baseman over there, even though that was the whole hang up with the Red Sox in the first place. Who knows? That's not really germane to what I want to get to, though. Uh, the return was very light for the Red Sox. I mean, Jordan Hicks, former Cardinal, in this deal, gosh, if you'd known that that's all it would take to get Rafael Devers as Jordan Hicks, the Cardinals could have done that a couple of years ago. Um, his ERA over 6, by the way, just has not been a good year for Jordan, and I always wish him the best. Enjoyed covering him when he was with the Cardinals, but hasn't pitched well. Kyle Harrison, another arm that it just seems like they got some spare parts for the most part. The Red Sox in this trade, what they got though, and why I think it's relevant to the Cardinals, is they got a lot of salary relief, financial relief, as they're in the early stages of a 10-year contract with Devers that's like $300 million in total value, and they're out from under that now. As far as I know, I don't know what money changed sides, if any, or if this was just basically a straight salary dump for the Red Sox, which sounds familiar, right? The Mookie Betts deal was in a lot of ways panned for being exactly that, or just the notion that they weren't going to be able to re-sign him, and so they decided, get what you can for him and let Mookie Betts go. That was when Chaim Bloom was in charge over there, and Red Sox fans may have more disdain now for Craig Breslow than even they do for Chaim Bloom and what they perceived as, tearing things down with that Mookie trade. Although now the farm system in Boston is as good as any in baseball. You're welcome, says Chaim Bloom for that. But it's interesting from the Cardinals' standpoint because a couple of things. One, it would have not been a huge stretch to see the fit that Rafael Devers might have been for the St. Louis Cardinals. The main problem with it is that money, right? Is the idea that Bill DeWitt and this ownership group were going to be ready to commit to a long-term contract of that caliber without some significant financial relief coming from the Boston side in a trade. Now, that wouldn't have worked because I think Boston's goal was to get the player out because it just was an untenable situation. It had gotten to a point where, you start to worry about your clubhouse when one guy is being paid as much as he was being paid and he's not playing ball with what the team needs. It can be a cancerous situation. I think that's partially what they thought and why they decided they have to act now. I saw some reporting as well that Devers kind of said, "I don't feel valued, and if you don't value me, I'd like you to send me somewhere that they'll value me." And kind of a lot of parallels being drawn to the Luka Doncic trade. Aside from that, where it's like reportedly, according to Buster Olney, they didn't really shop around. They just met with the Giants and got it done rather than kind of telling other teams like, "Hey, we're going to move this player. What are you going to give us?" Very strange the way that played out. If it's true reporting, because you figured they could have gotten more than just some kind of spare part pitchers in this trade. But if financial relief was what they were seeking, the Cardinals weren't probably the right team because the Cardinals would have probably said, "Okay, can we get some of this contract paid down? And then we might have some pieces to give you." Obviously, part of it could have been Arenado, right? They could have flipped Arenado to the Red Sox, played Arenado at third, moved Bregman to second, or whatever you want to do. I think Arenado is still a premier defensive third baseman, and that would have been an upgrade for them. It would have obviously been a shorter term commitment for the Red Sox, which kind of works because they're still out from the long term nature of the money. If you're the Cardinals, the bat of Devers at 28 years old or whatever he is would still be really good for a really long time, but you have to kind of figure your way around the fact that he thinks he's a third baseman or a DH, and he's not willing to maybe move around. But for the Cardinals, I don't know, maybe that would have been fine. You could have played Gorman at third. I guess you do have a logjam of DHs, but Contreras is only going to be here a couple more years, and then maybe Devers could be compelled to play first base, whatever the case would be. It wasn't a perfect fit. I'm just saying, anytime a bat like that is available, and you're a Cardinals team that, what have we talked about? They don't have that superstar bat in the middle of the lineup that you can just count on to carry a team. Devers is that type of bat. I have said for a while that Rafael Devers is the most underrated bat in baseball for a good period of time. Now, I can't say I've kept up with what his numbers are this year, but I've seen for a long time he's been a very, very powerful force. And yeah, the defense of it is, what it is, but that's why they've turned him into kind of a DH. I think Boston was onto the right path there, but for whatever reason, he just was not taking to that. Yeah, he's got 56 walks, which leads the league, 905 OPS. He's having basically a career year, a career 859 OPS guy. He's a freaking awesome bat. I mean, this would have been a great player for the Cardinals to target because they need that offense. I don't know exactly how it would have worked with guys like Burleson that you want in the lineup, who's also kind of a DH only. Again, not a perfect fit, not a perfect storm. And that's partially probably why it didn't happen. But the money is the biggest reason. But the aspect I want to talk about is not that the Cardinals could have had Devers, but it's that maybe the Red Sox could still have Arenado. It's tricky because I think you win more games with Arenado on the Cardinal team the whole year than you do if he's traded midway through. But Boston was one of those teams that I think Arenado would have been willing to go to. And they're out from under that money. And so financially, are they in a spot now where you could take on the Arenado money, not really sweat it, and they could potentially realize in Boston that, we have a better chance to win this year if this guy's out there playing Gold Glove caliber third base, and maybe a change of scenery helps him offensively. I think the Green Monster would be an absolute treat for Arenado to smack doubles off of and hit homers over. We know the way that he pulls fly balls for power when he is right, and it would be a complete 180-degree turn compared to what he does at Busch Stadium. Sometimes the ball doesn't fly out there, and Arenado has been, aware of that versus going to Fenway and being able to play under those circumstances. So I think it'd be great for him. I think there is a compelling argument to be made that, maybe this year it's not perfect, but are the Cardinals going to be maxed out at 85, 86 wins anyway? And in an increasingly competitive National League, is there a realm in which you go, that's maybe not going to get the job done? That's not going to be the playoff caliber season that we want anyway. And this was supposed to be kind of a reset, retool year to be able to set the foundation for the future. What if you can get a piece or two, get out from under some Arenado money, and open up third base for the rest of the year for Nolan Gorman so you can decide for the future what he is? And look, if he's not part of this roster or part of this organization moving forward because he just doesn't do quite enough offensively, which, look, man, ever since he started playing regularly the last few weeks, we've seen a better version of Gorman. So I'm not 100% ready to count him out like I might have been previous to that, where I wasn't counting him out, but I was basically resigned to the fact that, hey, this is going the way it's going. And if it doesn't pan out for Gorman, it wouldn't be very surprising at this point to see him moved in the winter. But now you kind of look at it and say, all right, he's good. He's gotten a sliver of playing time. He's looked good in it. Don't know what he would be defensively at third every day. Don't know how that would look. But you do have guys like Sajacy waiting in the wings. You also have a guy by the name of J.J. Wetherholt that I am not of the mind that you have to know right now today where and when he's going to join the Cardinals. And by where, I mean at what position. But I think you open up third base a little bit. And who knows, if J.J. is absolutely smacking at AAA in July and August, not impossible that you'd bring him up for a cup of coffee at the end of the season in 2025. I don't predict that, but there's a world in which you could paint that picture. So I'm not saying Arenado's on the trade block, but if Boston were to call, I think there could be a fit there still. I really do. It depends on where the Cardinals are. It would be very easy to see over the next month if you play 5 games below 500 and suddenly you're 2 or 3 games under mid-July. I think that's the circumstance we'd be talking about. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it does resolve a little bit of that logjam for the future. And this is basically a way that you could kind of say, hey, the season is probably not a playoff season without fully waving the white flag, because Arenado's OPS is around 700, right? Like, it's not like he's having a great offensive season. 692, that's not productive. That's not, the level of bad that we're used to seeing from him. And look, maybe that makes it more difficult to get any real value for Arenado. But if it's about clearing the spot, if it's about clearing some finances and getting him into a place where he wants to be and can, try to compete to make a World Series happen in his career, maybe that ends up being a win-win-win for everybody. And look, the Red Sox just picked up some pieces, some extra pitchers that maybe there's a name in their system now that they're more willing to part with because of the trade that they just made. And look, the Cardinals actually have a better record than the Red Sox as of this moment of recording. They're 37-36. The Cardinals are 37-35. But the Red Sox, maybe they're still trying to go for it, and they could see this Arenado thing as a potential fit. I'm not advocating for the Cardinals moving Arenado, but I do think it is interesting, compelling conversation, and I'm curious to see what Cardinals fans think, and if they think there's a fit there that maybe I see, or maybe something about it that I don't see. Let me know in the comments below. But those are my thoughts on the whole deal. Thought it was interesting just how, the parallels there of them having the third baseman to get rid of, the fact that Arenado wanted to be there or was willing to go there, and Now we're in the middle of a season where the Cardinals are playing decent baseball, and so maybe Arenado wants to stay. It's still his call at the end of the day, but let me know in the comments what you guys think, and that'll kind of wrap up that version of the conversation. But I do want to really quick, before we get out of here, make sure we talk about the minor leagues. So we will go down on the farm.
It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh?
We'll get through talking about the Memphis Redbirds from Sunday. That was not as fortunate of an outing. The whole Zach Plesac thing, not off to a great start. I said I didn't mind the Cardinals giving it a try with a former MLB pitcher. Was with the Cleveland Guardians, some familiarity there for Rob Strofolio, I imagine. Plesac has not been successful so far in his turn with the Memphis Redbirds. 3 innings, 8 runs all earned, 10 hits, 1 home run. So Plesac getting hit around a little bit. Maybe that doesn't pan out, but I think with all the injuries they had been dealing with and are still trying to figure out who to upgrade from AA to AAA in that rotation, taking a flyer on Plesac. Still have no issue with it, but we'll see if it lasts. Offensively, Sajacy had a 3-for-4 day. He's up to 312 on the batting average and 825 on the OPS. Nathan Church, ever since being called up from AA, this guy might be knocking on the door. I mean, you think about an opportunity for another young outfielder and who might be the most deserving from those guys at AAA. Nathan Church, man, he is raking right now. 2-for-4 on Sunday. He's hitting 425 with a 964 OPS. Now, he is another left-handed batting outfielder, which is not what the Cardinals need. They really need the right-handed version of that. But how many years in a row have we been saying that? So we'll see what happens, but something to keep an eye on there with Nathan Church. But the Redbirds, they lost 8-2 on Sunday. Back to Saturday, where I neglected to do a down on the farm. That would have been the day to do it. 3-0. Memphis took the win. Church was 2-for-4. Sajacy was 2-for-4 that day. Jimmy Crooks was 2-for-4 with a couple of home runs and 3 RBIs in that game. He is getting those numbers up a little bit. 768 the OPS as of Saturday for Crooks. So a nice 3-0 win in which he provided all the offense. Michael McGreevy provided all the pitching. 6 innings, no runs, no walks, only 3 hits allowed, and 6 strikeouts. For McGreevy, who improved to 7-1 at Memphis, 2.51 ERA. He's got nothing left to prove there. You know it, I know it, the Cardinals know it as well. Let's just see the way that this next month and a half unfolds, because McGreevy is going to make a start for the Cardinals about his next turn, maybe a little bit longer than that, depending on the 15 days and how they need to maneuver it. But he's going to be back up with St. Louis, and if he shoves in that start, there's no guarantee to be that he has to go back to Memphis. Whether that's Palante, struggling, whether that's somebody else struggling. Right now, it does feel like Palante would be the name, but I'm okay with the Cardinals having given and continuing to give Palante a little extra runway because, he deserved it after last year. If it's a case where Palante does eventually get sent down for McGreevy, doesn't have to be permanent on that front. But I think if McGreevy comes up and stays, it will be hard to send him back at that point. I'm talking in August, September. But late June, you're going to see McGreevy. There's a couple more chances for Palante, and then I think a decision gets made, at least in the short term, at the end of June, as far as how they want to proceed with that rotation. And look, if Palante goes down for 15 days and looks good in Memphis, and then there's an injury or something, very easy to bring him right back in. I don't think a short-term stint in Memphis for Palante would indicate the Cardinals have completely given up on him. But certainly McGreevy has nothing left to show in Memphis. You're not stunting his development by keeping him there for the time being, but I do think the Cardinals might. It's to the point where there might be a benefit to this year's team and to future teams to go ahead and let McGreevy pitch. And I still say they're going to. I've said it all along. He's going to make a dozen or so starts, maybe more in the big leagues. And I am still pretty confident in that number as this goes along. I think you'll see a lot more of Michael McGreevy the second half of the year. So just wanted to touch base on that. Somebody I wonder if you're going to see the second half of the year, I still think you probably could, is Ryan Fernandez. Inning and 2/3, 2 strikeouts, 3 hits allowed, but no walks anyway in his outing on Saturday. No walks, no runs. Has a 5.2 ERA, but we've seen the strikeout stuff still be pretty good from him. I'll be curious to see how soon he's back. And the same thing for Gordon Graceffo, who got the save for Memphis on Saturday in a scoreless 9th inning. I think Fernandez and Graceffo could also play a part down the stretch for the Cardinals. And certainly if you think about next year's bullpen, those guys could be in the mix. There's still the makings here of a Cardinals club and an organization that I think is compelling down the stretch. And those guys could be part of the reason why. We'll take a quick look at Springfield. They had a little bit of a rain issue on Saturday, so they finished up a couple of games on Sunday. And J.J. Wetherholt was good in both. 1 for 3 with a couple of walks and a double in the game that the Springfield Cardinals won 6-4, and then they also had a 7-1 win in which JJ went 2 for 4. We saw a couple of hits from Leonardo Bernal in that game. Just a nice all-around look by that Springfield Cardinals offense. Some weird pitching lines because of the rain. Rajic only goes 2 innings in game 1, and they go with a bullpen game in game 2. So not a lot to get to from the pitching side of things, but love to see JJ doing what he is doing. That OPS up to 929 as he continues to rake. Joshua Baez as well was 1 for 3 with an RBI double, and he is OPSing 926. So like I said, some good things at Springfield and some good things throughout the Cardinals organization, even though the big league club lost on Sunday. And we'll continue to watch things all year long with the St. Louis Cardinals here on B-Shape Daily. So make sure you guys are subscribed on YouTube to this channel or following the podcast on Spotify. Just search B-Shape Daily. That, though, is going to do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Shape Daily. Peace.